Namaskar. Hello everyone. A very warm welcome to my channel. I'm RVD and we are here for the next video of my playlist Programming in C Sharp. It's video number 3 and it is on variables. So let's go ahead with this video where we'll be learning about what is variable, how do we declare variable, what is variable assignment, what is variable initialization, and so on. So it is nothing exclusive to C Sharp as such, but as we are going in a flow, I thought of including this as well. So if at all you are learning C Sharp as your first language, this will be very useful. If you have learned languages like C, C++, Java and all these concepts are quite similar in these languages as well. So what is a variable? It is used to store the value that can change during the time. So it's not that it's going to have a fixed value. No. Variable is something which is capable of storing different value at different point of time. So that's what I said. It is capable of changing it over the time. Now what variables are generally used for? We can use variables for storing the user input. So when we expect some input from the user, like enter an integer, enter number of lines or whatnot. So we are not aware about the value. We rather want user to give that value and we are supposed to store it. So that's the best use of variable, to store the user input. While processing, many a times we create some intermediate result, which is not the final one, but it is required for further processing. So such results can be stored in variables. Also, the final output that we create, many a times it's not that it gets directly displayed on the screen, but it has to be stored somewhere before we display. Again, for that we can make use of variable. Naming variables. So your variable must be a valid identifier. Again, if at all you are aware about the earlier ways of naming the variables, so those same sort of rules are even applicable when it comes to naming a variable in C Sharp. So what are the general rules for naming an identifier? So if I'm creating a variable, the name of the variable should be a valid identifier. So rules of naming identifiers are applicable. It cannot be a keyword. So what it has to be a combination of alphabets, literals, underscore, and in case of C Sharp even dollar is allowed. So these are the various things I can make use of to create an identifier. It must not start with a digit. So obviously it can start with either alphabet or your underscore or even dollar. Okay, my mistake, I guess there is a typing mistake here. It should be alphabet and digit. So I can have alphabets, digits, underscore and dollar, but it must not start with a digit. So it can start with rest of them, but it should not start with a digit. Okay. It is case sensitive. So the uppercase and the lower case is identified separately, and it can be of any length. So there is no restriction on length of an identifier. So this is how other variables can be named. Let's go ahead. Variable declaration. So variable declaration is the process of creating a new variable. The syntax is like data type and variable name, and obviously it has to be terminated by a semicolon. Let's look at the example. So I can create int a semicolon. This is a data type int, variable name a, and it declares a variable of type integer, and the name of the variable is a. If I want to declare multiple variables, I can a, b, c, and then it has to be semicolon. If I want two variables of different type, again it cannot be combined. So I cannot have, let's say, int a, float x. Not possible, because the type is over. Now for int I just want one variable, I have to terminate it by semicolon. Now next I want float x, whether you write on the same line or on the next line, it doesn't matter, but it has to be after the semicolon. So it's very clear, the variables of the same type can be combined by comma and I can have a single statement. But if it is variables of different types, it must be with two different statements. Okay, that's variable declaration. Now what is variable assignment? So it's a process of assigning some value to it, because generally when the variable is created, either it stores a garbage value or maybe the default value. Okay, so if you want the variable to be used, you have to give its own value. So when I declare a variable, let's say int a, it is currently declared but it does not store the intended value. So I can do the variable assignment. So suppose I say a is equal to 50. This is how variable assignment is being done. You can see the syntax. And now what a stores is 50. Okay, so this particular part is variable declaration and this is variable assignment. Clear? What if I combine this together? Good question. And that's what the next thing we have. Variable initialization. So it's a process of assigning the value to a variable during the variable declaration. So when you declare and you assign at the same time, it is called initialization. It's very clear to understand that initialization can be done only once. Whereas declaration and assignment, declaration obviously you can do, and assignment can be done multiple times once you declare the variable. Okay, but initialization is a special thing. For example, int a is equal to 50. Now if I do that, as soon as I create a variable, I can assign it. So there is no default or a garbage value getting stored. It is directly getting assigned to the intended value. Now there could be different types of initialization. So I can have static and I can have dynamic initialization. You know, the one which I showed you just now, let's say int a is equal to 50. It's nothing but a static initialization. So it is nothing but assigning the static value to a variable at the compile time. So the value is available at the compile time also. Okay, so it is not something which is computed, it is available. So it's a static initialization. But dynamic initialization is the value is assigned to a variable dynamically or at the runtime. So maybe if at all I go with something like double x is equal to math.sqrt in bracket 30. Now when I say math.sqrt, you know, the value, the square root of 30 is to be computed. So that cannot happen at the compile time. Fine. So that happens when the program is executed. So first it will execute, it will get the value, and then that variable will be initialized. So it is not getting initialized at the compile time, but it is getting initialized at the runtime. Or maybe the value is not available at the compile time, but it is available at the runtime. Okay, so that is static and dynamic initialization of a variable. Fine, so I just purposely kept this very short so that we'll be able to have things getting delivered in small chunks. So this was exclusively for variable. We have seen what is variable. It changes the value over time, or it can change the value over time. How to declare a variable, how to assign it. I can do assignment number of times, but if I combine it together, it is called initialization, which has to be done, or which can be done only once. When you declare it, you can only initialize that time. We have seen the two types, that is static and dynamic initialization. Okay, so that was it for the current video. Thanks a lot and wish you a very happy learning.